Hi guys, this is Connie, back for some more Connie Reads White Fragility. I'm starting to get my rah-rahs all mixed up. This is chapter 4. This is going to be section 2. This is the subsection called Freedom of Movement. Because how does race shape the lives of white people is the ultimate title for chapter 4. And then it says Freedom of Movement. I am free to move in virtually any space seen as normal, neutral, or valuable. While I might worry about my class status in some settings, for example, when attending a high society event, such as a museum opening or an art auction, I will not have to worry about my race. In fact, my race will work in my favor in these settings, granting me the initial benefit of the doubt that I belong there. I also will certainly not be the only white person there, unless the event is specifically organized by or celebrating people of color. In the early years of my career as a workplace diversity trainer, I co-led the workshops with Deborah, an African-American woman. After a particularly grueling travel schedule, I proposed that we get away for a relaxing weekend and suggested Lake ch4. I don't speak French and I don't know where the accents are. I proposed that we get away for a relaxing weekend and suggested Lake ch4 in Idaho. Deborah laughed at the suggestion and let me know that visiting northern Idaho did not sound like a relaxing weekend for her. Besides being a very small town, Lake ch4 is near Hayden Lake, where the Aryan Nation was building a compound. Although not all people who live in the area are avowed white nationalists, the knowledge that some people might be part of this openly racist group was terrifying for Deborah. Even if there were no organized white nationalist encampments in the area, Deborah did not want to be isolated in a virtually all-white environment and have to interact with white people who may have never met a black person before. Yet, as a white person, I did not have to consider any of this. All places I perceive as beautiful are open to me racially, and my expectation is that I will have a pleasant and relaxing experience there. Next section, just people. Answering how does race shape the lives of white people? Just people. Another way that my life has been shaped by being white is that my race is held up as the norm for humanity. Whites are just people. Our race is rarely, if ever, named. Think about how often white people mention the race of a person if they are not white. My black friend, the Asian woman. I enjoy young adult literature, but I am taken aback by how consistently the race of characters of color is named and how only those characters' races are named. To use an example from school, consider the writers we are all expected to read. The list usually includes Ernest Hemingway, John Steinbeck, Charles Dickens, Fyodor wow, I suck at these names. There's my white privilege. There's my white fragility. I can't pronounce names from other cultures and backgrounds, white or not. Fyodor Dostoevsky. I've definitely not heard of it. Sorry. Mark Twain, Jane Austen, and William Shakespeare. These writers are seen as representing the universal human experience, and we read them precisely because they are presumed to be able to speak to us all. Now consider the writers we turn to during events promoting diversity, events such as Multicultural Authors Week and Black History Month. These writers usually include Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, Amy Tan, and Sandra Cisneros. We go to these writers for the Black or Asian perspective. Toni Morrison is always seen as a Black writer, not just a writer. But when we are looking for the Black or Asian perspective, we return to white writers, reinforcing the idea of whites as just human, and people of color as particular kinds, racialized, of humans. This also allows white male writers to be seen as not having an agenda or any particular perspective, while racialized and gendered writers do. Virtually any representation of Human is based on white people's norms and images. Flesh-colored makeup, standard emojis, depictions of Adam and Eve, Jesus and Mary, educational models of the human body with white skin and blue eyes. Take, for example, a photograph that was circulated widely and featured in the Daily Mail. The photo of a blonde, blue-eyed white woman is captioned, "What would a scientifically perfect face look like?" Below the image is the question, is this the perfect face? This one example illustrates several concepts discussed thus far. The white racial frame, whiteness as the human norm, whiteness as ideal beauty, and whiteness as naturally superior. Not only is the idea behind the claim racially problematic in its own right, but it rests on and reinforces the backdrop of an earlier era of scientific racism. Consider models for child development and its stages, and how our culture talks about children as a collective group. Theorists present human development as if it were universal. Occasionally, we may distinguish between boys and girls, but even then, the categories are presumed to include all boys or all girls. Now consider all the dynamics I have discussed this far. Is an Asian or an indigenous child's development the same as a white child's within the context of white supremacy? I'm going to keep reading the title because it helps. How does race shape the lives of white people? Next section says white solidarity. White solidarity is the unspoken agreement among whites to protect white advantage and not cause another white person to feel racial discomfort by confronting them when they say or do something racially problematic. Educational researcher Christine Sleeter describes this solidarity as white racial bonding. She observes that when whites interact, they affirm, quote, a common stance on race-related issues, legitimating particular interpretations of groups of color and drawing conspiratorial we-they boundaries, unquote. White solidarity requires both silence about anything that exposes the advantages of the white position and tacit agreement to remain racially united in the protection of white supremacy. To break white solidarity is to break rank. We see white solidarity at the dinner table, at parties, and in work settings. Many of us can relate to the big family dinner at which Uncle Bob says something racially offensive. Everyone cringes, but no one challenges him because nobody wants to ruin the dinner. Or the party where someone tells a racist joke, but we keep silent because we don't want to be accused of being too politically correct and told to lighten up. In the workplace, we avoid naming racism for the same reasons. In addition to wanting to be seen as a team player and to avoid anything that may jeopardize our career advancement. All these familiar scenarios are examples of white solidarity. And in parentheses, why speaking up about racism would ruin the ambiance or threaten our career advancement is something we might want to talk about. The very real consequences of breaking white solidarity play a fundamental role in maintaining white supremacy. We do indeed risk We do indeed risk censor and other penalties from our fellow whites. We might be accused of being politically correct or might be perceived as angry, humorless, combative, and not suited to go far in an organization. In my own life, these penalties have worked as a form of social coercion. Seeking to avoid conflict and wanting to be liked, I have chosen silence all too often. Conversely, when I kept quiet about racism, I was rewarded with social capital, such as being seen as fun, cooperative, and a team player. Notice that within a white supremacist society, I am rewarded for not interrupting racism and punished in a range of ways, big and small when I do. I can justify my silence by telling myself that at least I am not the one who made the joke, and that therefore I am not at fault. But my silence is not benign because it protects and maintains the racial hierarchy and my place within it. Each uninterrupted joke furthers the circulation of racism through the culture, and the ability for the joke to circulate depends on my complicity. People of color certainly experience white solidarity as a form of racism, wherein we fail to hold each other accountable, to challenge racism when we see it, or to support people of color in the struggle for racial justice. Oh, that hit hard. The next section's pretty long, so I think we're gonna, it's at 10 minutes. Yeah, be careful with that and enjoy, please and thank you, and we will do a section 3 next.